Hi, everyone. I'm DeFi Dad. You're watching episode 29 of Yield TV. Okay, it is November 10th, 2020, and today we're going to talk all about Ethereum staking. So excited to welcome to the show Superphiz. Superphiz, or maybe we'll call you Hank, whatever you prefer. Superphiz is a beloved Ethereum enthusiast. He is definitely, I think, one of the most prominent experts that is speaking layman's terms about how to stake with proof of stake on Ethereum. And he is going to kind of talk us through like what we should be thinking about in terms of assessing whether or not you might stake, and then what's involved and some of the risks. So anyways, Superphiz, Hank, welcome to Yield TV. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
All right. And it's funny because I was asking around, before, like, oh man, like who would be good to talk through ETH staking with me. And it's funny because I think it was Patricio who had said, he's like, oh dude, you guys will love each other. So excited to talk just because I've watched a number of your videos. So Superphiz does these videos where you really you talk very informally about some really hard questions that I think very few people are answering about staking. And anyways, we're going to kind of talk through how he's thinking about it as someone who is, my understanding, Hank, is you're not a developer, right? I
know. I consider myself an enthusiast.
Yeah.
When I see myself referred to as an expert, I'm probably like a lay expert, as in I understand a lot of things, but oh my God, there are so many I don't understand. And I resist the urge to make it up as I go, but I do know where to get the answers. And so I'm filling in the gaps as I go.
Yeah. Well, Hank, why don't you start from the beginning and tell us about how did you get into Ethereum? What's the backstory of how you discovered crypto? I know we were kidding around before we hopped on about I think we both, like most people, found Bitcoin first and then eventually migrated our interest over to Ethereum. But yeah, talk me through that history and how you discovered crypto.
Sure. So I was just surfing the internet in, I guess, April 2011. I've always been obsessed with, the internet, with technology. And I've always enjoyed collecting things, just collecting random things, like coins. My coin jar is something I obsess over, even though it's just, and incidentally, I also, I've always fashioned myself a miner. So I dug a basement in my last house, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Miner Hank. And so
no way.
Funny, 2011 came around, and I saw a Slashdot article about Bitcoin, and I remember I just stopped, and I was like, oh my God, that's the future. I felt at that moment like I was seeing the future, and my sense of urgency was insane. I was like, this is, I felt like it was breaking news, and so the next day that everyone was going to be completely obsessed with Bitcoin. And so had a completely I guess the the first GPU miner had just dropped, and that was the news that I had read. And so I didn't really have much hardware, but I had a crappy old GT and NVIDIA GT card that wouldn't actually mine, but I didn't know any better. And so I was mining on it and just getting everything oh my God, this is the coolest. And so for the next week, I was telling everybody, this is it. This is going to happen. Bitcoin is here. You've got to, in no time, everybody's going to be on it. And so fast forward a couple of years when I'm still obsessed, I had gotten into mining. I'm still talking about it. No one else still cares. And so I was very entrenched in the Bitcoin community, but I was feeling disillusioned. The community was relatively sour. I had played with some altcoins, but I found out about the Bitcoin white paper and read it and understood about 4% of it. And so I watched Vitalik talk.
That's a lot to understand back then.
Understood even less because, you know,
hey,
Vitalik is.
When did you first read the Bitcoin white paper or really like fall down the rabbit hole?
That would April 2011 is when I first got Bitcoin. And I kid you not, I just obsessed over it. And it's not really even that I'm smart. It's that I was just so persistent. Like I couldn't shake it. Like I've really since that time I've just obsessed over crypto. And so in about 2014, 2015, I read the Ethereum white paper. I was going to put a ton of my Bitcoins into Ethereum, but instead I decided it was more judicious to pay off a credit card. And and so we had the pre-sale, and I barely participated. And when I really got into it was with the Olympic testnet on Ethereum, when it was like mining again for the first time, and I loved it and I ate it up. And so there was a community around Ethereum 1 mining, but it was not a collaborative community. It was, and I guess it was an ETH mining then. It was fragmented, and mining on GPUs is competitive. Like, you do better when your buddies suffer. So there's no real like community development there. And so fast forwarding through the last couple of years of Ethereum, when proof of stake began rumbling, I kind of felt like this is my opportunity to build a community the way that I think that it should be done. And so
like it's come full circle for you then. Yeah, that this is really interesting. So you start out mining and I didn't realize that. So yeah, tell me more about that. How have you been thinking about building that community? Or like, I guess also too, like, we want to talk through the basics today too, of like, what's the significance of this new deposit contract? Like, where are we in the timeline of ETH 2.0? Because it's been, I think for us, like, honestly, it feels like it's come quickly. Like I feel like it could have been further out. It's been a nice surprise that all that's happening is happening now. But yeah, I think like that's the main question that I'm always asked is like, where is ETH 2.0? Like when is this ever coming? Like, is this a decade away? Like, when am I gonna stop paying such high gas prices on Ethereum?
And I'd say it's all relative to your perspective. So like having watched it, I guess, since 2016, 17, it feels to me like an eternity. And I know some of the people who've been working on it, they're like, wow, this is a life's work. But then I texted a lady who I used to work with, and she bought 32 Ether, and she's like, tell me when staking goes live. And I texted her last night, and she was like, oh, wow, already? And I was like, well, that's one way to look at it. So if we zoom out, Ethereum went live, I guess, 2014. Vitalik talked then about a potential long-term scaling solution, but there was no high pressure for it. And when we really got to talking about the scaling solution, I think it was in 2016, Danny Ryan began with, at least my knowledge of it began with Danny developing a contract that required a 1,500 Ether deposit. And it was a very different system. And I had followed that. I knew he put a lot of effort into it, and I had no reason to believe that it wasn't, I didn't understand why it wouldn't work. I just know that one morning I woke up and they were like, hey, we're not doing it that way anymore. And so they rolled out this new, like, this is the way it's going to work, the new Serenity roadmap. And suddenly, while I didn't understand why the first roadmap wouldn't work, this one made such obvious and clear sense. And so since then, I guess that was 2016, 2017, the client teams have been researchers first, developed the whole spec for it. And you can really read the beacon chain spec. It's a marvel. And really what you would want to read is EIP 2982, which is the implementation of Ethereum 2 onto the Ethereum network. And that is written by Danny, and it flows so intelligibly that it kind of builds the case for why we need Ethereum 2 and how we're going to get there. So it's just a fantastic document.
Hank, how do you describe, like, if I'm, by the way, too, like, I just want to keep running with this story, but I'm thinking of the basics along the way that the average person might not know about, even though they're in the Ethereum community. When we talk about Ethereum 2.0, I'm wondering how you describe it. Like, I'm trying to remember, I think it's Danny who said it on Into the Ethers podcast, that it's kind of like rebuilding the Ethereum machine, and then Ethereum 1, or whatever you want to call whatever we're in at this point, whatever iteration, will kind of get plopped inside of Ethereum 2, and it'll be like a branch of this. So it's like you're rebuilding a bigger, better, more efficient machine, and we're going to take what's working right now and we're going to connect it, and it's thankfully like it's like what do I want to say, like almost like an interchangeable part that you can drop in and continue to operate.
And so the big idea with that is that the thing that end users need to know is the entire setup for this is intended so that Ethereum keeps running just like it has before. So at the moment when ETH1 gets snapshotted and loaded onto a shard, an end user who's using MetaMask may have to update MetaMask. They may have to, well, that's essentially it. They're not going to see a change in their workflow. If you're using DeFi tools, or if you're running a CDP, or if you're trading at Uniswap, as an end user, you're likely not even going to be aware that you've changed to a different network unless someone tells you where you read it somewhere. And the whole benefit there is there are so many Ethereum users who may not even know what they're doing. They may not have any, in fact, I've talked to some high school kids and I'm like, hey, look, this is MetaMask, install it, click here, click there. And they don't get the big picture. And it's for those people that Ethereum needs continuity. It needs to continue running smoothly without any hiccups. And that design is really an important thing. And you can expect that to happen. This is what we're calling the 2-year lockup period. At this moment, the deposit contract for Ethereum 2 has been opened, and people are actively submitting deposits. The earliest the beacon chain can actually launch is in December. And then the beacon chain is just going to run. It's actually standalone and separate from the Ethereum proof of work network. But when it gets running, developers are going to begin working on the next, well, they've already been working, but they're going to turn all of their attention to the later phases of the beacon chain. And those are the phases that are going to onboard the current network. So the big message there is, if you're a current Ethereum user, your workflow is not going to change. If you're wondering about the deposit contract, can I jump into that? Is that okay?
Oh, please. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Just
so right now, the deposit contract is all the rage, and people are like, well, the deposit contract has been open maybe for, I lost track of time, 7 days. And people wonder, well, how come it's not full? Why hasn't everyone rushed in? And I think, I love it. I love the way that it's unfolding right now, because it gives people like you and me, people like me, who I don't have a ton of Ether. Like, no matter how much I talk about this stuff, I'm still a little fish. But I had an opportunity to participate in the bootstrapping of this brand new network. And there's plenty of time for people who are just getting started to make their deposits. I think that in the next 2 weeks, really around around November 23rd or 24th, believe that's when the big holders are going to begin turning their bots on and submitting their deposits. I feel very strongly that the minimum deposit threshold will be met by December 24th. And I think that right now is the opportunity for the little guys to kind of get the opportunity to go first, because when that window begins closing, there's likely to be a stampede to get in the door.
Yeah, so, I think so too, right? Kind of like a FOMO. Like right now, I think there's actually, I want to break down further this deposit contract with you, and like why is anyone depositing Ether? Like, we don't need to go like super technical into the weeds, like keep it high level, but like why does anyone have to do that? Because right now this is new, and I know that there's a lot of caution to put Ether in, especially like we're going to talk today about like the different profiles of people that we think will participate and that won't participate, maybe even shouldn't participate. But you know, if you have 32 Ether, like if you have 32 Ether, and that is, let's just pretend that's like my whole portfolio, I wouldn't deposit that into this. Like, I mean, skip it. You'll be fine. I think that the risk outweighs the reward for that person. But like you were saying, there are folks right now who are sort of watching, you know, this play out, and they have every intention of depositing. In fact, I think people have been tweeting about it as well, and kind of like making a commitment that they will. But when it happens, it'll be the same thing as always. There will be a very reflexive uptick in the desire to participate. So anyways, what is the reason that anyone needs to lock up their Ether for 2 years?
That is the great fundamental question. So I'm really glad you asked. Right now, Ether is produced through proof of work mining. And that is generally when you use a GPU, or sometimes you have a warehouse full of GPUs, and they're solving hashes to earn an Ether reward. That model of proof of work mining is being retired in favor of a new model of mining called proof of stake. And this is the product of many years of research. Proof of stake is essentially putting down a retainer that says, hi, I'm telling the truth. If I don't tell the truth, you can take away my retainer or my deposit. And so that 32 Ether deposit is essentially represents your miner or your investment in your mine. And so once you put up that bond, you have the opportunity then to vouch for the legitimacy of actions on the network. Basically, one person is selected to be a proposer, and they say, hey, here's a block of transactions. And then a committee of validators says, yes, that's a good block, or no, that's a bad block. And so as long as they tell the truth, they get a tiny reward, which are Genesis coins. So they're not coming from transactions. They're being created by the block. And so they get that tiny reward for telling the truth. Now, if you're offline, you're not doing the job of validating, and you're going to leak just a little bit. You're going to leak about as much as you would leak if you were online. And that is very specifically called leakage. Everyone is familiar with slashing, and slashing is a very different kind of action. Slashing is if you've done something nefarious, like you have reprogrammed your validator to create fake coins and then set it loose on the network. Someone will say, hey, that guy is lying. Other people will agree, and then you'll be slashed. I like to think of the difference between leakage and slashing as leakage is not going to work. You're not going to get paid, and your boss is going to call you and say, what the heck are you doing? So that's leakage. Slashing is if you rob a bank. You go in and you try to steal funds. You might get away, but you're probably going to get arrested, and you're going to spend a long time in jail. So it's the difference between missing work for a day and robbing a bank. Not at all the same. Everybody misses work sometimes, but not everybody robs a bank. So that's kind of the easy way to keep slashing versus leakage in your head.
Am I right to say then that those terms get confused often and misused? Because I feel like I hear people say slashing all the time in reference to, well, if I run a validator and if like my power goes out, well, what if I get slashed? I think that's the way I've heard it. And is the right way then to think about it's actually leakage that you would experience?
That's absolutely correct. We've kind of been in this information battle where the best thing is for people to understand the correct term, because we can't have a conversation. You and I can't have a conversation about leakage if you're talking about leakage and I'm talking about slashing. That does come up quite a bit. And so the important thing to learn is that there are two ways to be penalized. One is a very simple minor penalty for not going to work, and the other one is a very major penalty for robbing a bank. And once you have those in mind, then we can have much better conversations about what they mean.
And what are my understanding with leakage is that like you're losing a pretty insignificant amount of ether, like less than 1 ether, right? Is that the estimate, or is it more than that? Like let's pretend I'm running a validator, which we're going to talk more about that, but let's pretend that I'm running a validator at home and I am staking 32 ETH, and my power goes out, or the hardware I use is suddenly broken. I don't know. My kids pour their milk all over it. And I would then experience leakage because I'm not going to work. It's not that I'm robbing the bank. What is the maximum based on like current estimates or whatever your understanding is of it?
The simple way to think about leakage is you lose as much as you would have gained if you had been online. And that is in most cases. So you're offline, you have to order parts from Amazon. It takes 2 days. And so you're offline 2 days. The next 2 days you'll spend digging out of the hole, but then you're back up and you're making money again.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, I have to move across country twice a year. I'm going to be offline for 2 weeks. I would say that's mostly okay. Like you will leak for 2 weeks. But as long as your validator is otherwise well behaved, you're going to make that back in 2 weeks. There is a situation. It's called quadratic leakage, and that occurs when the network is under stress. That means, and you can think of this as like a world-altering event. Let's think of a massive earthquake that just tears apart the internet all over the world. If more than 33% of validators are offline, the network goes into this quadratic leakage mode that is basically a repair mode. It is going to leak offline validators very severely, and people who are online will maintain their balance as long as they're doing a great job. And so the goal of this is to leak those inactive validators down to 16 ether, and then they're ejected from the network and the network heals. But the likelihood of that happening in the real world really does boil down to a world-altering event and not just like, boredom or maybe your ISP goes out. One of the things I always tell people, though, if 33% of validators decide to sign up with AWS and AWS goes down, then quadratic leakage will kick in. And that's really why I encourage people to stake from home. If you're the only one offline, your penalty is tiny. If much of the network is offline, those people who are offline are going to be leaked severely.
This is so interesting. I definitely had an unnecessary amount of concern about going offline. So I've never run a node. I haven't done any sort of like mining, and I did buy a Raspberry Pi a few months ago. One of the newest ones, the Raspberry Pi 4. It was like something like, it was definitely like, I was told, I actually reached out to Prismatic Labs, and Preston Van Loon had said that this was enough to be able to run a validator. And anyways, I have yet to set it up. And I've actually, as time has gone on, I've been a little more like, well, like, will I be able to do this? Like, am I risking too much in terms of my own ether holdings? But you are definitely moving the needle for me. I'm starting to realize like the feels like the reward far outweighs the risk. Okay, let's dial back a second then. So we've talked about the significance of the ETH2 deposit contract. We're talking a bit about like, I mean, what that means to the Ethereum network. We've talked more about, I think, proof of stake we've somewhat covered already, and talking about like how validators are helping to discern what is truth and what is not. Can we talk, Hank, about what are the profiles of people, the different profiles that you could foresee participating in proof of stake? And we can leave out like the whales that, you know, have like a whole big setup. Like they'll be fine. They're already 2 steps ahead of us. But for everyone,
is really our membership. Our people are really people who are levels below enterprise. You know, I know they're enterprise stakers with us, and you know they're kind of lurkers because they're really dealing with a different ball game where they're writing custom software and developing custom solutions. But we really are what I would call minimalists, hobbyists, and enthusiasts. And so the minimalists, you actually brought up the Raspberry Pi. Preston is not wrong. It is possible to run an Ethereum validator on a Raspberry Pi. I really discourage it because as a validator, you have to think of yourself not as a miner where, you know, I'm earning profit. You have to think of yourself more as a network participant. And so as a network participant, network is under load, when it's under stress, there's more traffic, there's higher memory and CPU usage, and Raspberry Pis just kind of drop out. They cannot keep up with that load, which means that your node is bogged down and you end up leaking. And if it's a major outage, then those people who are on Raspberry Pis will not be back online until everything gets back to normal. And I feel like if you're going to spend $10,000 in Ether on a stake, then you might also consider spending about $1,000 on quality hardware to make sure that you can do the job when the seas are rough. And it may never happen, but from that whole participant perspective of I'm a participant in the network, you really need to be ready to do the job when the job is difficult. And so that's really why I steer people away from Raspberry Pis.
Hank, can you earn more during those, what you're calling like rough periods, like to ride it out? Like, cause I mean, if I am and others are not able to go to work and we're experiencing leakage, are others earning more during that period? Just because
during a quadratic leakage period, the miners who are doing well are generally going to stay at their constant balance. It is basically the network going into survival period. And I have to be honest, it's likely not even to ever happen on mainnet. It is a worst case scenario. Like in the spec, it's described as a World War III scenario. It's not likely to happen. But what does happen, those people who kept their constant balance, the network is going to drop off people who fall below a 16 Ether balance. When the network gets back into finalization, the people who are left at that time will be eligible to get significant rewards. They'll begin making back what they had lost, and the rewards then are they're not extraordinary, but they are significant compared to the normal small rewards.
Hank, just while we're continuing the conversation, someone had a question here. Is it possible to use bot validators to sustain the whole process of validation?
Let me think it through. If by bot, and what I think of, well, let me think of, you have nefarious bots, as in a validator in itself is a bot. It is a program designed to do a job over and over. And so from that perspective, your validator is a bot. If the question means like a botnet or a bot attack, yeah, it is possible for a botnet to run a validator in the same general way that you have Monero bots now. While it's certainly not anything that anyone in the community would encourage, there's no reason that a nefarious user could not use someone else's system to validate on Ethereum.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, by the way, too, I'll just interrupt at times if we see any other questions like that come up. Going back to the user profiles we were kind of starting to cover there, maybe the one that I'm most interested to talk about sooner is those that aren't going to run a validator. They simply want to participate, and they could do that through like a pooled system, something like a rocket pool. Can you talk me through like what should we be thinking about at this point in time? Like, is there going to be an option soon to be able to stake via something like a rocket pool? Should we be cautious to stake through a service like that? I think about DeFi and smart contract bugs and what if something goes wrong with some of these. But yeah, can you bring us up to speed on that?
So I love the opportunity to talk about this because it's something that weighs on me and the organizers in our community every day. The Beacon chain is in its infancy. Transactions are not possible. You cannot remove money from the Beacon. You cannot remove Ether from the Beacon chain once it's been deposited. There are a lot of reasons that I would say right now, the only people who I believe should be participating in the Beacon chain are solo stakers. It's a chain genesis. It is brand new. Things are not likely to break. Things are going to break as we move forward. And I know that many people who would do pooled staking are chomping at the bit. But my message to them is now is not the right time for pooled staking. And I've been in contact with a lot of pool runners who, they want me to vouch for their product. And I think a lot of them are great products. I look forward to when I'm comfortable vouching for them. I've said the name of the pool that I'm a fan of, the decentralized pool. I talk about it a lot because I think it's a great product, but it's not time yet. It's not the December 1st potential launch is not the time for pooled staking. The time for pooled staking is going to begin about 6 months after the December release. And I'm really saying, let's look at June 2021. And that's the right time. Maybe before then, I'll be watching very closely, and my friends will be watching very closely. And when it's a great time for pooled staking to begin, I will announce it as far and wide as I can. But right now, let's say you have 10 Ether. I really think your best bet is to hold that 10 Ether. Even more so because the appreciation that's likely at that time, none of us can predict the future value of Ether. And if it goes to some astronomical value where you're definitely ready to sell, you want to have it on hand then. But if you submit it to one of these staking pools, whether they lock it or whether they leave it liquid so you can pull it out, the reward that you're going to get is not commensurate with the risk that you're taking to do that stake. And that's why I just go do something in yield farming or DeFi. Do something that is only mostly risky. Don't try to add risk on top of the risk of the Beacon chain by adding pooled staking when the network is still in its infancy. It's just not time yet.
I think maybe this is a good time then to ask, do you have any more updated estimates for what one could earn as a validator whether they're, let's say, in something like Rocket Pool in the future, where it's a pool versus actually running a validator themselves at home. Any updated estimates? I remember Eric, Connor, and Anthony from ETHHub had a really great estimate. If you just go to ethhub.io, look up ETH2 staking. It's like one of the most like popular articles in their wiki. But yeah, Hank, anything else that you've seen recently to help someone to discern like, well, I could earn 5 to 10% more in Ether?
The problem is that when you recognize that your Ether are going to be locked in the contract, if you're looking at today's potential reward, okay, let's say right now the deposit contract hasn't even made the minimum balance. I bet if you plugged in whatever the value in that contract is today and you got some kind of estimate, it would be like 38% reward. And so if you look at that today and say, oh my God, I can get 38% if I just do a stake. And so you send your 32 Ether away. You're not the only person doing that. There are going to be tons of people who are like, hey, I want that return. And so it's gonna quickly increase the volume in that deposit contract, or eventually on the Beacon chain, to where the rates fall to a more reasonable level. And so I feel like for the first year, you might look to get, let's be fair, in the 10% range, which is great interest. I'm not denying that. But for the risk you're taking, it's a significant cost. So that's really why I encourage people, just hold off on pooled staking. If you have 10 Ether and you put it in a pool, they're going to take, so your 10% return after a year would be 3 Ether, and they're going to take, maybe a quarter of that. And that leaves you with 2 Ether. I don't really think it's worth having those Ether locked up for that period and taking that additional risk of losing it all just to get a tiny return. Still significant. I mean, 2 Ether is 2 Ether, but I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think also you're talking about what is like the fundamentals of understanding the risk reward ratio, and for anyone who's like not familiar with that, just Google risk reward ratio or calculator, and you'll see that there is, there's a lot of thinking, of course, around this, especially in the trading world, but just investments in general. You think about like, how much could I lose here, and how much could I potentially earn? And I think for those who have much larger amounts of Ether, I think it's a no-brainer. They can allocate a certain portion of their Ether to staking, and the mindset is, even if I lost that stake, I could continue on and definitely live a fulfilling life with the rest of whatever they've earned there. If you have, I think a good example of someone I would think shouldn't be participating is if you have 32 Ether, and that is, again, let's assume that that's, I don't know, 50, 75%, 100% of your portfolio. You don't risk it all on staking right now, especially as you pointed out with the risk that's being additive when you go into a staking pool, along with the Beacon chain, along with like a 2-year lockup, along with all sorts of unforeseeable variables in the world. Like, we talk about these doomsday scenarios, which, you hope they never come true. But yeah, World War III is definitely something that I think rightfully was thought about in terms of this network. What happens if we have something that truly brings down the internet? So yeah, this is really helpful. I think like this is the sort of fundamentals that I'm hoping if someone watches this later and they're like, I have 32 ETH, or I have a little bit less than that, I'm like, hey, we appreciate your tribute to the network and being a part of the Ethereum community, but don't risk it all just so you can say that you're staking. There's plenty of other folks that are going to take that risk. What other profiles, Hank, though, do you think about? Like, so we kind of covered.
If I can,
yeah. Oh yeah.
talking about that person who, if you have 32 ETH, don't stake. Don't do it. Trust me, please don't. If you have 64 ETH, like, you can go ahead if you're comfortable, if you're willing to take the risk. Do it.
Yeah.
But the person that makes me the most nervous, because I see a little bit of myself in this person, is they haven't spent a lot of time preparing, and they feel like it's easy money. Like right now, shoot, I can send my money to that deposit contract. I can go through Launchpad. I can click all the buttons. But then when it comes time to maintain that server, and they're, a junior server administrator, and they're still learning some things, things might go great for a few weeks, a few months, but then your chain stops finalizing, and you're not quite sure, like, do I delete it? Do I resync? Why can't I connect to Ethereum 1 all of a sudden? Where are my peers? I worry about people finding themselves in this position where they just feel stuck and panicked. And that leakage kind of, I know it's going to be like a penny a day, but you need that penny, and you're going to be like, it can be more stressful than it's worth. And that is really the reason I'm saying, this is not, as many people assume, it is not just send your deposit and get money out. It is an actual responsibility of participation. That means you have to continuously and effectively run that server. And you do get downtime. You do get to make mistakes. But what I don't want people to do is find this additional stress of feeling like they're just not ready to do it, but they have no other choice. I don't want people to wind up in that trap.
Hank, I just pulled up the Launchpad website, which will be, I think right now this is the only way for one to deposit into that contract. We're referring to the deposit contract for the Beacon chain. What I want to call out here is, I think, something that a lot of people don't understand that you were worried about. So if I go to deposit and follow along with all the instructions here, what you're trying to highlight is the fact that this isn't a DeFi application where you go in and you deposit and you walk away from it, and whatever mechanisms take place, you're a liquidity provider, you're lending and earning interest. This is just one step of many that you'll be following, including the investment we talked about with hardware and running a validator. Even if you run like the setup that I bought, which I probably will still try for the sake of experimentation at some point. Like I might just do it maybe on just the test net. But anyways, that setup for me was like $160. What you're saying is that if someone locks their Ether in the deposit contract, I mean, now they've locked themselves into many more steps ahead of them, and it's going to be a long-term commitment. It's really like potentially like a 2-year minimum commitment. So just think, if you are unaware of everything else that we're talking about here, if you listen to this episode, watch this episode, there's a lot of resources that I think we can leave folks to dig into to better understand what's ahead of them before you participate in something like this.
And I want to add some caveats to that. I think people should stake. I'm going to stake. I think you should stake. It'll be fun. But I just need people to think so carefully about it before they Leroy Jenkins into it, and they're like, now I'm screwed. Yeah. So there's nothing in me that's like trying to dissuade people from participating. I just know that there's a right time, and there are people who are ready to do it and people who aren't. And so there's one thing I have not mentioned. You do have the opportunity to end your responsibilities as a validator. There is the opportunity to exit the validator responsibility. You do not exit your coins. Your coins will remain locked on the network until the network goes live. But let's say things get really hard and you can't afford your internet bill, and your coins are locked, so you can't use those to pay your bill. you can submit a request to the network to be exited as a validator. And when that happens, your balance will be frozen, and you will be able to access it when the network goes live in that presumed 2-year period. So it's not doom and gloom. I feel like I get into that a little bit, like so many cautions. It's fun. I want people to do it. I feel like that moral responsibility. Like, I don't want you to lose your coins. If you're doing this for fun, if you're recognizing that this network is in an infancy and it is experimental, then by all means play along. But if you're doing this because you think you're going to make money, you might have the wrong motives.
Yeah. And I'm always conscious of, again, every person has their own unique experience here that's going to consider this. And just thinking about, I think there's a broad audience that ends up watching Yield TV episodes. So, there's folks that already rightfully know that they're going to stake. I will say, like, I'm pretty confident that I will participate with at least 32 Ether. I'm not quite sure yet whether I will run a validator or not. I think a part of me wants to do it just because of like what we've talked about. Like, I think it sounds fun. But my personality is more geared towards trying lots of things. I kind of get a high out of trying things and sharing them, which is probably why I make tutorials about DeFi. But for the person who is, who's interested in supporting proof of stake and looking to, potentially earn a return, even though it's not guaranteed, this isn't financial advice, they could go through a staking pool. So, hey, anything else here, Hank, to call out with the ETH2 Launchpad website? This is clearly the first time I've sort of clicked through it. The first step there was just it was a bunch of like really helpful information, just saying, I understand I'm taking lots of risk. Then you have to ultimately select one of the clients that you're running for your node. Anyways, have you gone through this already, or is this something you're waiting on?
There are about 3 things that I would encourage everyone who is thinking about staking to do. The first thing is, before you submit any funds, go through the Launchpad and read and consume every word. The Launchpad was refined and polished over many iterations to share the best information. So the Launchpad is great. The second thing that I would encourage anyone to do is to commit to a month on a testnet before you consider staking on the live net. And so you might say, well, the network is launching in less than a month. I don't have time. I have to do it now. So you have time. You don't have to be in the Genesis block. What's important is that you're comfortable with the responsibility. You're comfortable checking on that server, keeping it running. And so right now we are using the Medasha testnet, and the Medasha testnet is having a little bit of struggle. There's some discussion about creating a new testnet. Whatever testnet you use, put 30 days on the calendar. It's the setup. Anybody can set it up. You can get it set up, but I want you to be sure that you can continue running it for 30 days. And the third thing, is really join us in the ETHstaker community, whether it's on Reddit or Discord, because you're going to be surrounded by people who are doing the same thing, and that support network is really valuable. I love our collaboration groups. It's where you sign up and you'll get put in a private room with a private chat with 5 other people, and you just kind of get to like kick it and say, hey, this is what I don't get, and I didn't want to ask in a big room, but I don't know what an SSD is. That's really a good opportunity to just find your own little core group, your own community. And so those 3 things, checking out the Launchpad, staking for a month, and joining the ETHstaker community. If you've done those things, then I think you might be ready to stake.
Very interesting. And we'll make sure we link all this too in the show notes. So that was the ETHstaker Reddit, but also the ETHstaker Discord. Where would I find that? I was kind of looking through your Twitter timeline to look for links here.
So we have, I do most of my posting on Reddit, and there are 2 links on Reddit. They're the top sticky posts on reddit.com/r/ETHstaker. But to get directly to the Discord, you can go to invite.gg/ETHstaker, and that'll get you right into the Discord. Whether or not you use the Discord, I really want everybody to check out those sticky posts. And that is our
very cool,
our announcement to the network. But there should be a post that says, let's see. If you go to ETHstaker and sort by hot.
Yep, here we go.
I don't know how to use the new interface. There we go. Should be the top. So that's these stickies. If you look at the welcome, that has all the information that we think you want to watch. I love the YouTube introduction. It's just hanging out, hearing who we are.
This is great. This is so helpful. Like, this is what I kind of need to dig into too. Like I definitely don't think I qualify quite yet to say with all certainty that I should be participating. But it's funny because I am hoping with that Raspberry Pi, like I'd like to run the testnet validator. Like, right, that's what you were saying would be like a good way to get started, to run that, to kind of like gauge, like, am I capable of doing this? You know, is this working for me?
Yeah. People will get a sense. You'll know if you're on the testnet, if you have trouble starting and stopping a service or finding out how to configure the service. If you're having those basic problems on the testnet, then there's nothing wrong with continuing to update and continuing to work on testnet until you really feel like you're battle hardened. And when you're battle hardened, you feel more comfortable about handling problems on mainnet, because there's only one eject button on mainnet, and that is exiting your validator. And once you do that, you can't go back in with those either. They're going to remain exactly where they are.
Wait, so talk me through those deadlines in December. What is the first one in early December versus the one on December 24th? And then I also would love to just reiterate what you were just saying. Like, let's say that someone starts validating, December 24th has passed, or I'm sorry, they deposit into the beacon chain, December 24th passes. What are their options then for the future in terms of staying or going?
Okay, yeah. Let me begin with the dates. The November 3rd is when the deposit contract opened. November 24th, well, let me zoom ahead. December 1st is what's called the minimum genesis time. It is the first moment in time that the beacon chain could launch if there are 16,384 deposits in the contract. Now, there have to be 16,384 deposits in the contract, and then a 7-day waiting period for everyone to get ready. Mm-hmm. And then the chain launches. So December 1st is the minimum genesis time, and you have to back up 7 days from there to November 24th. And so if the minimum deposits are met on November 24th, mm-hmm. then we can begin that 7-day waiting period until December 1st, and then the network can launch. If for some reason, right now everyone's talking about the slow trickle of deposits. Let's say we don't get enough deposits until January 7th, then a timer will start midnight of the next day for 7 days, and then the network will launch after 7 days of.
Okay. Gotcha. So got to get certain number of validators in, and then or deposits in, and then 7 days delayed until we would see that actual launch. When you say launch, does that mean we start to see blocks formed, or like what is actually happening then?
This is really exciting. We've actually done a lot of practices for this. So that 7 days gives everybody a chance to set up their beacon chain client and validator. Mm-hmm. And those you'll recognize as Lighthouse, Teku, Prism, and Nimbus. So you can choose any one of those. I'm like, should I endorse one? No. But
Wait,
so you'll
very quickly on that though, a lot of people ask about this. Why are there multiple clients? Just
this is the
sure.
best thing ever. So if you've been in crypto a while, you're like, hey, to launch a coin, all you have to do is put a wallet out there and people will run the wallet and they can mine from their wallet and everything's fine. You don't need multiple versions. Ethereum 2 has this a superior method. It is essentially developing communications as a protocol. So there's a standardized method of communication that the network will always use. And to ensure that the client follows the spec, the clients are developed in multiple languages. And so let's say that we discover that Teku and Nimbus don't communicate well. It means that one of them is not following the spec correctly, or something needs to be added to the spec. And so there's been several months of looking at communications between the clients to make sure that their communication is flawless. And at that point, you don't just have a network system going. You have this protocol that says this is the standard way that clients must communicate with other clients. And it's a what I would call an anti-fragile design technique. So
interesting. Yeah. If you had to rename the term client, what would you use? I think that throws off a lot of newbies. They're like, what the hell is a client?
I feel like maybe I've used it so long that I'm used to this whole server model client, and I'm used to, mining clients. So I maybe just call it a piece of software or a tool. I like to call things tools. So it could be your validating tool. It is the thing that does the job for you.
Yeah, that's it right there. That's what's available there. And that's everything, or am I missing?
These are actually Ethereum 1 clients. And
that's right. Okay. Yeah.
What you need as your Ethereum 2 node needs a source of data from Ethereum 1 to know what deposits have been submitted. And so there's Geth, basically Open Ethereum, and Nethermind. While I don't often talk about preferences, I have a strong personal preference for Geth. But obviously, if you have a different choice, by all means go with it. They're all vetted by the Ethereum Foundation. They're all considered trusted clients. But yeah, you'll need to install an ETH1 client and an ETH2 client. So if you want to skip to ETH2 clients, we can talk about those really quickly.
Let's do that. Yeah. By the way, I just thought this was really clever. Someone just posted in the comments. I like to think of clients like internet browsers. Everyone has their own preference in internet browsers, but they all access the same internet. Thanks. That's really helpful. Okay, here we go. So Hank, should I pull up anything in terms of those ETH2 clients, or do you just want to talk through them?
If you scroll through on the Launchpad, you're going to get to a page that shows them. I can describe it, but it's easier if we can see them when I do it.
Absolutely. Here you go. Here is the Launchpad again. And then let me just, should I just continue onward here?
Yeah, you can just continue through all of them, and you'll see one of them that is, there we go. And so what you're looking at are the before release ready validator clients. And during this 2-year process, there have been at times like 9 clients who are working toward this release. But in the final mix-up, we have 4 that are release ready. And so I can tell you a couple general things about them. Let me tell you a big picture. The most important thing is that you choose a client that not everyone else is using. And this gets back to that leakage thing. If there's, let's say, for example, everyone is using Prism. If 90% of the network is using Prism and Prism has some kind of fault and causes you to go offline, then 90% of the network is offline. The network goes into the quadratic leak, and all the while Prism they're doing updates, they're trying to get it fixed, but you're leaking funds while the other 3 clients are continuing to validate. And so in a perfect ideal world, we'd have 25% of the validators on each of these clients. In the real world, there are differences between the clients. So Nimbus was developed to run on light machines. The first time I tried it on an Android.
Oh wow!
And so Prism and Lighthouse, I would say, are considered to be the general purpose staking clients. They work very differently, but they have the same kind of like, this is most home stakers will use Prism or Lighthouse. And then finally, Teku is considered the enterprise solution. Teku still works for people at home. You can still run it at home, but the target for the product is those enterprise stakers, like, exchanges who are going to be staking.
Makes sense. And is there a financial incentive to choose one that's not being used by as many folks? Like, actually, I guess, like, how would I even check to see which one is being used less? And yeah, I guess, like, yeah, is there anything to prompt me to use that one?
Yeah, so there are some benchmarks that have shown through development which client is attesting the best, which one is following through with proposals the best. But for my worth, what I can say is it's okay to expect equal performance or similar performance out of each client on launch date. There are going to be minor differences, but they're all working to meet this same standard. And so from that perspective, there should not be a difference in what you choose. But in terms of like looking at the network to say, oh, well, I can see that 40% of people are using Teku and 20% of people are using Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
There's anonymity in the clients. So there's no broadcast by default what client you're using. So there's no like magical table that lets us say, aha, I can see how this is distributed, and this is what I'm going to use. That ends up being an attack surface. And so you can enable it. There's actually a site that allows you to, and I won't say the name because it may be in transition to another location, but you can use a tool to broadcast the client you're using so that people have a dashboard that shows the overall health of the network. So it was hosted at eth2stats.io. It may be being moved, but basically it lets people who opt in show what client they're using. But other than that, it's really just random is an acceptable method to choose a client. If you're a first-time staker, I would suggest that you randomly choose between Prism and Lighthouse.
Yeah, that's helpful. I gotta say, between all of them, I just recognize the logo for Prism. I just like gravitate towards because it looks like, gosh, what's the album?
Yeah, Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Yeah, it looks like Pink Floyd. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, I'll just use that one.
One of the awesome successes of Prism is they launched some early test nets. They onboarded a lot of users. They have a lot of faithful followers. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, they have a bit of a cult following. With that said, there have also been some hiccups with the Prism client in the past test nets, mm-hmm. which is really, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody gets hiccups, but it really tells you that while it is a good client, diversity matters.
We're mitigating risk, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying we're mitigating the risk of one of these failing. If we were using one of these and all of us are on it and there's a problem, we're screwed. The more clients, the more. I mean, it goes back to even like simple principles of like why you want as many people running a validator as possible, because the more validators run by a single entity, the greater risk there is of losing that one entity. If I don't know, a warehouse burns down with a bunch of validators or a government clamps down on them.
Yeah. And you don't have to panic, because what's really going to happen is, let's say I'm on Teku and there's some kind of bug that causes it to lock up. They're going to release a fix. I mean, there are going to be hundreds of people who have nothing better to do than to make sure that these clients run well, especially for the first 5 months. So there are going to be fixes available, but better to avoid that, avoid damage to the network during that time. And the network will heal itself. The network doesn't need you. It will be fine.
Absolutely.
I keep saying 5 months. There's the first scheduled hard fork is after 5 months. And those first 5 months are a period of kind of breaking in the chain, breaking everything in. And then after those first 5 months, there will be a hard fork that will add the first improvements and push things forward. And that's really when I would encourage people to take a second look at staking pools.
Yeah. Anything else, I guess, Hank, that you'd want to cover on the staking pool side? I mean, I think that what we've looked at here is what's more foreign to a lot of community members that want to potentially stake. When I think about those that would be interested in a pool, I definitely think of Rocket Pool, which I'll just pull up here. Where are you, Rocket Pool? Because this is definitely going to be a popular avenue for people to participate in staking. So let me just share that screen here. Is there anything that you think is worth thinking about now and preparing for? Obviously, you can go here to rocketpool.net. You can join. What communities do they have? You can join their Discord, follow them on Twitter, but they are not ready yet, right, Hank? They're not ready to start supporting the beacon chain deposit.
They're ready. So they're running a beta now that is running really well. The network doesn't have a feature that they Rocket Pool is trying, and it's funny because I want to say this, and I don't want to promote them. I just want to give accurate information. I am a fan, and I have trouble like maintaining that balance.
No. This is I mean, we have to call it what it is. I mean, this is one of the most well-known, well-followed, and I think most reputable projects right now that's contributing to this. Like I'll say it. I don't hold any RPL, so I don't feel like I have any personal bias. But yeah, I've been really excited and impressed by their ability to launch a decentralized approach to this. That it won't be a centralized entity that I'm submitting my ether to that's going to provide that as a service, which a few years ago I think sounded even more radical at the time, because we weren't seeing tokenized networks other than like the base layer of like Ethereum and Bitcoin doing really well. We were all sort of hypothesizing how tokenized applications would work on Ethereum. So the timing of this is just awesome. Like I'm really excited to see what happens with Rocket Pool.
So I'm going to explain my hesitancy, and then I'm going to go ahead and say what I want to say. So I've been contacted by several pools who say things like, why do you favor Rocket Pool? Why do you always bring up Rocket Pool? Why aren't you being fair to the other pools? And as the community organizer, I want to be fair to everyone. With that said, I get my own preferences, and I haven't put a ton of due diligence into other pools, but I am aware of Rocket Pool, and they are choosing a non-custodial, decentralized staking option. The reason they're not launching with Genesis is because they require contract hooks to be added to the beacon chain before they can be fully decentralized. And my understanding is that they're choosing to wait until those contract hooks are added so that when they launch their product, it is fully decentralized and they're not a custodian of funds. And so I admire that. I'm not saying that I know everything about them. I haven't actually even read the last incentive paper, but everything that I know about this product tells me that it is what I'm interested in looking for when I'm looking for a staking product.
And can you remind me, have they launched with their testing here, the Rocket Pool beta? Like no one has submitted actual ETH yet to get what will be called R ETH. Like this is still running, in this case, on the Gurley testnet, right? Like there's nothing. Eventually, when they launch or are offering these services on mainnet, what one will receive in return for staking Ether for as little as 0.01 ETH, they'll receive R ETH, which is a tokenized staking deposit. Am I covering all of that correctly, or anything that I missed?
Yeah. So essentially, the interface to use it as a home staker is wildly simple, and you should check out the beta if you haven't now. You can be a home staker as not someone who's running the client, but through your browser, you go to MetaMask and you say, I'd like to stake 1 Ether. You click a button, you authorize it in MetaMask, and as far as you're concerned, you're staking from that moment, and you don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. What you're going to pay for that is a fee to the network, and that eventually gets back to the node operator, who is someone who has a server in their home or a server in a data center, and they're running the software, on quality machines. And as a home user, you don't have to worry about it at all. You're collecting rewards, and someone else is essentially doing the hard work in a decentralized way, which is really the key for what we want for that network robustness. Is that this is not one company running one warehouse of servers that can go down and take everything out. It is spread out all over the world.
Very
so
cool.
Your network is on mainnet instead of Gurley.
Very cool. There we go. So now I got it working here. So I'm on Gurley, and let's see here. I could trade. Let me just double check how much Gurley ETH I have. I don't know if that's, yeah, I do have 30. Someone gave me a bunch of Gurley ETH. I forgot about that. I remember looking at it being like, oh, if that were only real Ether.
Gurley rich. Yeah.
Oh man. So let's see here. Trade for that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I can do here right now while we're live on screen. Trade 10 ETH for this. You know what? Hold on. Let me just hit refresh here. Maybe it got screwed up here because there we go. Yeah, sorry. It was because I was on the mainnet before. So 10 ETH for this. All good there. Is there anything else that I can do right now with this? Like,
well, to be honest with you, this is the full product for the end user. And so it's not overwhelming. You essentially stake your ETH and unstake so it's a on-screen exchange.
Wow.
The simplicity of it is one of the best draws.
And wait, what would I do here to, like, I've got down trade 10 ETH, but like, can I prompt a Gurley transaction?
I'm going to be totally honest. I haven't used this. I work as a node operator. I haven't played with the front end except for the
Yeah. No. That's this is cool. I mean, I can see this. I'm just looking to see if there's any buttons I can press here to help further this along. But I've got 10 ETH. I'd be doing 10 Gurley ETH for 10 R ETH.
It should trigger a MetaMask transaction when you hit start. The revolving.
Geez. Ridiculous. Sorry, I thought that was saying restart. I kept beta is very popular. The current trade pool there's room for 0.38 for 0.38 ETH. Oh man, I love it.
So what that means is they need more node operators to come online. Many people played with the beta, and now they're ramping up from mainnet. And so some people who were running nodes to support the home users are shutting down to transfer over.
Oh, looks like I'm
mainnet.
gonna get through. I put through 0.2 because it said, here we go. I've confirmed. Let's see if that goes through. Yeah, I think Bankless did a nice interview with, I think David, is that the co-founder?
Yes.
But like, cool to see this stuff. Again, this is another option. And I mean, none of this is financial advice. And I think if anything, like, we're trying to express all the caution in the world about where we are right now. Fortunately, I think there's more folks like you out there who, you know, are fully on board and spending a lot of time to figure this out. There we go. Went through. Wow, that was easy. That's cool.
Rocket Pool has been around since about the beginning of Ethereum staking. So even when we were looking at 1,500 Ether deposits, Rocket Pool had a product ready for that. And then we switched models and they retooled. Wow. And they have been iterating and developing since then. The entire time they've been cooperative with the community. They've been really responsive and like just grown in a way that, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm sorry that I'm not promoting every other staking product, but Rocket Pool really is the one that has earned my trust. And I welcome others to earn my trust, but right now it's right here.
Hank, what else? I mean, while we're on that topic, can you rattle off as many names as we can think of just other similar pooled staking that will be offered? Again, it's not a recommendation. Just I am curious to know what else exists out there. I didn't know anything else.
Let me do it this way. We are developing a program through ETHStaker called the Ethereum Due Diligence Committee, and what that due diligence committee will do, so it's staffed with people who have technical knowledge, leadership in the community, and they will review these pool offerings and give them, it's not developed yet, it actually should be out in a week or two, a red, yellow, or green light, and maybe like a grade of A and B for green, or a C for caution, and a D or F for don't use this. And before I read off a list without really having vetted them myself, I'd like for that Ethereum Due Diligence Committee to vet those products and then give everyone a great tool that they can look at and say, I'm comfortable with this because it's been vetted by the community and it looks good. That vetting is not an audit. It's not a guarantee. It means that people who are knowledgeable spent an hour looking at the product and they evaluated it based on that. And I really feel more comfortable with that than just reading a list and not knowing if I'm accidentally promoting someone that will take advantage of users.
Absolutely. I think we're all always cautious and want to like make sure that that someone doesn't say, oh man, I went and tried XYZ because I saw you guys talking about it. So, you know, just again, reminder over and over again, you really should spend time doing more homework, learning. Like I hope that more people see this, and this is sort of what, you know, gets them interested, you know, to learn more about everything going on in staking. In all honesty, this has blown my mind. I do not know enough. And now between this and Axie Infinity, I feel like I'm going to like end up in a hole somewhere in our house, hiding away from my kids and my wife, trying to play Axie Infinity and learn about how to stake. Hank, we should probably wrap up soon, and just thinking about some homework or like a takeaway here. So we talked about the ETH2 Launchpad. That is at launchpad.ethereum.org. Great place to check out. And you can literally start clicking through there just to like learn about some of the risks and responsibilities that you take on. But I would, based on what you shared, I was going to recommend everybody go to our ETHStaker on Reddit, which I'll link in the show notes. Obviously, they should follow you at Superphiz. That's an easy one where they can start to kind of follow the stuff that you post daily. So that's follow at Superphiz on Twitter. What else? Anything else that we're leaving out in terms of resources?
The thing that sets us apart, the reason that you might think about staking when you didn't before. ETHStaker is friendly first and knowledgeable second. And there aren't a lot of communities like that. A lot of communities, you know, oh, you've asked a stupid question, you're gonna get trashed. The ethos that we set for our community is that first we are welcoming, and then we want to answer your questions. And so, really, what I want this to be a community effort. I want people to feel like they have a home. People need a hangout on the internet. They need to know, like, hey, when I've had a rough day, and for me, a lot of that is the ETH Finance Daily. Shout out to Jeremiah Nickel. Like, if you go on the ETH Finance Daily, you will see me talking shit every day. It's just where I relax. And so I want everyone to find that kind of thing. And for a lot of people, that's going to be, a core group under the Ethereum collaboration groups. I didn't mention we have the Ethereum Study Master program where you can earn POAP badges for reading articles and taking quizzes on them. And we're developing a new trivia game. So we haven't figured out if it's going to be monthly or quarterly, but we just want to invite people to play trivia and have a good time and learn more about Ether.
Really cool. I love it. It's like very, you have a very simple approach of just creating a very welcoming community and then being helpful. And as people want to learn, like I definitely take a page out of that book that we're both reading from. It's great. I definitely, this is a reminder of I think why the Ethereum community is such a successful community. And I think we're going to continue to grow as long as we've got people like you out there making it such a welcoming place. But Hank, anything else before we go? Like, again, I'll share all these resources. We'll tweet some highlights out, like a 2-minute highlights reel. Hopefully get across the all the cool things that we covered here. And would love to have you back, of course. Maybe we should have JT on sometime too. You reminded me.
He's a great person. Let's together because he's a hoot.
He's very funny. He should have his own TV show. So everyone won't understand it until he comes on to the show. He's just a real
he's a great guy. And also, I'd like to thank the ETHStaker core team. That's Patricio, Buddha. Michael and Nolan. They are, you probably know them by your screen names, but they work with me all day long, and I get to be, I call myself the fat face of ETHStaker, but they spend a lot of time just working with us, with the community to grow. And I'm just so appreciative of everything they do with us.
Yeah. Well, you guys keep doing great work. This was really helpful. I learned a lot. I knew I was blind to quite a bit here about ETH2 staking, but I think I have some homework to do, and I need to get on one of those testnet validators. Like, that seems to be one of the best ways to learn, by actually doing the rocket pool, the beta they're going through on Gurley. That was easy. I mean, I did trade some. That's all I had to do, right? I don't need to run a validator or anything.
I'll tell you what, as a node operator, it's just as easy. I've commented to the Ethereum Foundation, like, hey, look at what Rocket Pool is doing, because that's what the clients need to do. Install a node as a Rocket Pool operator. And mind you, you're going to get paid for doing it on top of your normal staking. It's basically like 6 clicks, or I'm sorry, 6 button presses of, yes, I accept. Yes, this is what I want to do. Okay, start it. So I would encourage anyone who's working on a client to just check out the Rocket Pool node setup and consider modeling their simplicity, because it's great.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. By the way, too, people were just saying thanks in the comments here, or just that they had learned a lot from you. So, well, everyone, just a reminder that tomorrow we will interview Vance from Framework Ventures. If you don't know him, you should tune in. He is a really one of the, I think, leading investors in the DeFi space, and they've invested in some of the top teams. So just kind of excited to learn from him. And he's someone like Hank here who kind of learns by doing. And except I think that's pretty radical as an investor to continue to be a market participant while you're actually investing in these teams. So we'll have him on tomorrow. Thursday, we'll have Sergey from 1inch walk us through 1inch V2. And then Friday, Matt Leasing, who wrote, is it Out of the Ether? Out of the Ether is the name of the book. Anyways, sorry, Matt, if I forget the title, but he's going to talk us through like the whole history that he wrote about of Ethereum. So all sorts of cool stuff to nerd out on this week. But yeah, Hank, thanks again. Everyone follow Superphiz on Twitter, and we'll share all these resources, and we will see you tomorrow. So bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.